Tonight, the federal government entered into a shutdown because of Congress's failure to pass an annual budget resolution. I know you've been hearing about it for weeks. How much will it impact your life? We want to know what you think. Is a government shutdown really a big deal? Tweet us right now at TakePartLive, and we'll read your answers live on the air. Joining me and Kara now to discuss this are contributing writer for Salon, David Dayen, comic and actor Cooper Barnes, and political analyst Peter Mathews. Welcome to the show, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for being here. This shutdown will not affect Social Security. It's not going to affect Medicare payments, but there are still a lot of ways it could impact you. That's what we're discussing in the first part of our panel, So What? And here are some of those ways. If you were planning on taking a trip to a national park, you could forget that. They're going to be closed, and that goes for the Smithsonian museums as well. If you were hoping to hear about a government-backed mortgage, you might have to put your home ownership plans on hold because federal loan processing is going to halt too. The CDC will have limited resources to respond to an outbreak, so cross your fingers for a mild flu season. And perhaps the most disturbing part of a government shutdown is the way it will impact the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, also known as WIC. Federal payments for the program will stop, leaving states to figure out how and if to supply the money. David, let me start with you. How big of a deal is this government shutdown?
Well, it's a real big deal for the 800,000 federal workers who are going to have to go to work tomorrow, pack up their things, and go home for a little while. Traditionally, these shutdowns end because there is a public outcry because it really does affect people. You say that Social Security checks continue to come out, but in the case of you changed your address or had something to talk to with the Social Security Administration, there's nobody there to answer the phone. So it has a significant impact.
Peter?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the reason it's there is because not only is the Congress divided, but the House is divided between radical right-wing Tea Party Republicans and moderate Republicans. And there's a big battle going on right there. And it's the Tea Party Republicans that will not give in and vote for a continuing resolution. They want to get rid of Obamacare. That's their main goal, and they're going to stick to it. And they're in safe districts. That's a problem also.
Cooper, how do you see all this?
Well, I mean, my understanding is that food inspections are going to be going away, and that's not good because I like to eat cereal, and I like getting free toys in my cereal, but I don't like when the free toy is a severed human finger. So
that's true.
But that's just me. I mean, I don't know how you feel.
It's just
Really just me. Okay.
Apparently that's just
probably
you.
not a problem then.
You know, I did get some tweets from some viewers of the show. This is what people are saying about the shutdown on Twitter. Dave McNally says, it's a really big deal. I'm a federal employee facing furlough after losing 11 days of pay to sequestration. I'm not happy. I also got one here from Patrick Barbano who said, these legislators are failing at their jobs. They should be able to be fired, just like the rest of us. And lastly, here from John Lancer, who has a different opinion. The U.S. is in the fiscal twilight zone as it is. $17 trillion debt. Shutting it down seems reasonable.
Yeah, well, it's not. You make a huge point about sequestration. I mean, if you're a federal worker, you haven't had a raise in 3 years. Thanks to budget cuts put in place by Congress. You went through sequestration, which means you were furloughed without pay since about March through the rest of this year. And now you're going to be sent home, potentially, if you're one of the 800,000 unlucky people who gets furloughed today. So, it's just a comedy of errors for people. And why would you want to become part of the federal government? We're taking the best and the brightest people and telling them that they're essentially worthless.
A comedy of errors is a great way to describe it. And shutting down the government is no small thing, even if threats of doing just that they're becoming almost commonplace. How often does this really happen, and can we break the cycle? That's what we're looking into in the second part of our discussion. It's complicated. David, Robert Reich was on this program just last week, and he's been saying that these threats to shut down the government are essentially extortion. Do you agree with that? And I mean, is this how the government's supposed to work?
It's actually how the government had worked for quite a long time before 1995 and 1996. People say there hasn't been a government shutdown in 17 years, but prior to that, the previous 20 years, there were 17 government shutdowns.
Sometimes 2 or 3 in a year.
Yes, and sometimes over social policy issues, things like abortion. There were 3 shutdowns over federal funding for abortion. There was a shutdown over the MX missile. There was a shutdown over Iran-Contra. So this is a function of a government system that we have set up where one party can be in the White House and another party can be in Congress, and the power of the purse being so important, Congress can use it to extract concessions from the White House. So it's really a function of our system in many ways, and a flaw in it, I would say.
I think that's an important point that you make. I mean, it's a founding function of the system, right? I mean, Congress was given control over the budget because we have to have a balance of powers in our government. We have to have a separation of these powers. I mean, what would it be like if the executive branch also had control of how we spend our money in this country?
That would include what's called an item veto, which, by the way, was in place for about a year and a half until the Supreme Court said that it was unconstitutional for the president to be able to strike out certain items and let the rest of it go through. The governor of California has that, and it actually works better to get things done. So we made a look at that again, and you have to have a constitutional amendment to bring the item veto back again. But the real problem really is divided government, as David said. And at those other times he talked about, earlier years, these guys worked out compromises. They worked out on common ground, and they settled it in a few days. This is a situation where you got the right-wing Tea Party, Republican Party, out of so many safe districts in the Midwest and the South, where they don't have to fear being defeated in the election. They can do whatever they want, and the people there will vote for them on a right-wing basis, so right-wing, complete extreme basis. And that's a problem because they don't want to budge.
They're not big on compromising these days.
Cooper, this was a founding part of our Constitution. The Founding Fathers put it in there.
Right.
What do you think is going awry?
Oh, do we have time to list? I mean, as a non-expert on the panel, this whole thing just blows my mind. This is happening. Like the government's just being like, yeah, we're closed. Yeah, we're closed.
But how do you see it?
How can you just close?
Do you see it the same way Robert Reich sees it? As this is extortion on the part of the Republican Party, or do you see it as the Republicans, the Tea Party people in particular, is taking a principled stand, in order to avoid Obamacare?
I think it is extortion. I just think it's insanity. I think it's part of the same MO they've had all along, which is this strange plan to maybe if we do this, Obama just won't be the president tomorrow. Like maybe we can just find a way to not have him be the president anymore. And I think that's just a crazy plan. Like he's 5 years in, they're not going to have a recount. Just
one more thing, with these layoffs, there's money being taken out of the economy, and there won't be enough demand to keep the economy, to get it going again. Right. We're in a big recession right now still. This great recession is not over yet. And if you take money out with these employees being, furloughed and things, it's a very bad situation. Making a bad situation even worse right now.
We'll have a major economic impact, probably 0.3% of GDP in the fourth quarter, something like that. But there's a cruel logic to it. I mean, Republicans were also elected by people all over the country, and they think they have a right to try to advance their agenda. The problem is that we don't have an accountable government, really.
That's true.
We have a situation where we have the ability for divided government, unlike parliamentary democracies,
system like in
Britain, Canada.
Germany,
if there was a problem with the budget, they would have another election.
Right.
And the winner of the election would get to implement their agenda. And then if we liked it as the public, we would get to keep them in. And if we didn't like it, we get to vote them out.
Absolutely.
It's a novel system.
Yeah.
One of the things many people at home, I think, are feeling right now is that during a shutdown, you might feel like things are out of your hands. There are still things you can do and ways to prepare for future shutdowns. That's what we're going to discuss in the last part of our panel. Take part. During a government shutdown, there's a lot of uncertainty. There are some things you do not need to worry about, including your mail. Do not worry, your bills will still be there waiting for you after a long day. Air travel is going to remain normal. Air traffic controllers are going to be on the job. International travel, visas and passports will still be processed because that comes from the fees that are collected from those passport applications. Your Christmas trip in the Caribbean is not in jeopardy. And the federal courts are going to remain open, at least for the first 10 days of the government shutdown. So if you're dodging taxes, those charges are still coming after you. What's your best advice, Peter, for people that are saying, is there something I should do differently during a government shutdown?
On an individual level, maybe they could be more cautious about how they spend their money and save more of it, but more like collectively, they have to get out there, make those phone calls, those emails, those tweets out there to Congress members and say, get on the ball. We're paying your salary. You're getting paid during the shutdown, and
but members of Congress aren't listening, though. People don't want this shutdown in the first place. So is that going to make a difference?
Those Tea Party districts where there's a one-sided vote, there's a lot of people that could register to vote. A lot of young people in college are not registered to vote in those districts in the South. Get them registered to vote and say, we'll throw these bums out next time if they keep this going. And this is a record we're going to remember. They have to do it.
Do you agree the number one indicator of somebody being elected to Congress is that they're already in Congress?
Right, exactly. Ultimately, public outcry is what stops these types of things. You'll notice that this is the point furthest away from an election And that's when they decide to
Right.
shut down
Sure,
the
of course.
government, so that we'll forget, next year when there is an actual election. But the amusing thing is that you talked about some of the things that are going to be open. The two biggest things that the Republicans want to shut down are, of course, Obamacare and things like financial reform, the two biggest legacies of the Obama era. Well, Obamacare is open today. The exchange is actually open today. And as far as financial reform, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the one agency that was created out of financial reform, is funded through fees. It's not funded through appropriations, and so they're going to be open too.
Peter said save a little bit extra money, maybe stash it under your mattress. Anything else they could do?
I mean, certainly the activism of calling Congress and saying get with the program.
And organizing on the ground.
And organizing is
using
probably a good thing
your
to do.
social media, use your grassroots college campuses to get people in those southern districts where these Tea Partiers should not keep getting a free ride, and they can really make a difference. Students can make a difference. Young people can make a real difference. They get organized.
Is this to put a stop to this, or just to survive it?
To clean out the house. It's time to clean house, in those districts especially, and get young people activated and motivated, and they will make a difference. Young people have led revolutions throughout the world, peaceful, nonviolent ones, mostly. That's what I'm advocating. But young people can do it, my friend. Look at those countries like Tunisia, other places in the world.
And with the shutdown happening, you can't get a gun permit during the shutdown, so it will be nonviolent.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's a good thing.
If we can look at like one silver lining, is that during the shutdown there will only be like 2,000 gun murders next month. So that's progress.
Not to mention all the work for graphics artists who have
all
specialties in countdown. That's a spike. That's
And on that note, if you are a good graphic artist, give us a ring if you've been furloughed during the shutdown. Thank you all so much, very much for being here.
Thanks
for more information on how you could take part, log on to TakePart.com/live.
Stay right where you are. The director of Jewtopia will be here to tell us why sometimes it's okay to be fake Jewish. And Monster.com and Josh Shipp will help us combat some workplace stereotypes about young people. Don't go anywhere.